Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at your sources on what's been called the death of prediction.
And specifically, the butterfly effect.
Exactly. Our whole mission here is to unpack how one single tiny rounding error just completely shattered this centuries-old idea of a predictable clockwork universe.
And that idea, the clockwork universe, was really the dream of science for so long. People like Laplace were convinced that if you could just know the position and speed of every atom,
You could calculate the future forever.
yeah, the whole universe was just one giant solvable math problem.
So for centuries, that was the bedrock of scientific thought. How did one meteorologist, Edward Lorenz, accidentally blow it all up back in 1961?
Well, it was a total accident. He was running a weather simulation on his computer, and he wanted to rerun a section of it.
Okay, so he just wanted to look at a piece of the model again.
Right. And instead of starting the whole thing over, he just keyed in the starting numbers from a printout to save time.
And this is where the mistake happens. But how small are we talking? I mean, was it a major typo?
No, not at all. It's almost funny how small it was. The computer's memory held the number as 0.506127.
But the printout.
The printout rounded it just to 3 decimal places. So he typed in 0.506.
That's it. That's the whole mistake.
That's it. We're talking about a difference that is, smaller than the weight of a single dust mote on the entire system. Utterly trivial.
And the consequence of that microscopic change was?
A completely different future. The two simulations just diverged entirely. What was supposed to be a calm, sunny day, 2 months later in the model became a full-blown hurricane.
Oh.
And that's the discovery. A tiny, tiny change in the input leads to a massive, exponential change in the output. The technical term for it is sensitivity to initial conditions.
Let's make that concrete. Your sources use this great analogy with linear versus nonlinear systems. Driving a car, for example, is linear.
Right. You turn the wheel a little, the car's path changes a little, it's proportional, it's predictable.
But the atmosphere isn't like that. It's nonlinear.
Exactly. That small change doesn't just nudge the system, it gets magnified. It enters a kind of feedback loop and spirals completely out of control.
Which gives us that classic image, right? The butterfly effect.
The butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil. That tiny puff of air gets amplified over and over until 2 weeks later, you get a tornado in Texas.
And this isn't just a theoretical problem. This brings us to what you could call the predictability wall. It's why my weather app is great for tomorrow.
But pretty shaky for 3 days out.
And after 10 days. Forget about it. It's basically a guess.
It is, because to predict the weather accurately, even 2 weeks out, you would need to know the state of every single molecule of air on the planet with infinite precision.
And we can't do that.
We can't even get close. Our instruments will always have some tiny error. And in a nonlinear system, that tiny error gets magnified until it completely overwhelms the prediction. Missing just one butterfly is enough to make the whole forecast collapse.
So this is the key question for me. If the future is unknowable beyond a certain point, how is that not just randomness?
But it isn't random at all. And that's the crucial distinction. The weather follows strict, deterministic physical laws.
It's an equation.
It's a perfect equation. Chaos theory shows us the universe is deterministic. The problem isn't that the rules are random, it's that we can never, ever perfectly measure the initial state.
So it's a paradox. The rules are fixed, but because our measuring tools are fundamentally limited, the future becomes unpredictable to us.
We're blinded by the complexity. The universe follows the rules, but you need infinite knowledge just to start the clock.
So the takeaway here is that the universe is basically giving us a cosmic shrug. The rules are there, but those tiny initial details we can never know make the future a closed book for us.
Yeah. It means our destiny is constantly being shaped by these tiny fluctuations we can't even see or measure.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. If something as complex as the atmosphere is fundamentally unpredictable because of this, what does the butterfly effect say about our own long-term plans? Think about it. Your 5-year plan or a global strategy for decades. How much of what we call a plan is really just at the mercy of some tiny missed detail from years ago? Today, we are diving into a concept called fractals. You might have heard them called something a little more poetic, like the fingerprint of God.
It's a great name for them because they really do bridge this gap between pure mathematics and the world you see right outside your window.
And it all starts with a surprisingly tricky question. How long is the coast of Britain?
Which sounds simple, right? You just get a map and measure.
But it's not simple at all. If you take a really big ruler, say 100 kilometers long, you get one answer. But then you swap it for a much smaller ruler, maybe one that's just a single kilometer, and suddenly you can get into all the little coves and inlets.
And the length just skyrockets. It gets way, way longer.
And if you keep going, if you imagine a ruler small enough to measure around every single grain of sand, the length just approaches infinity.
That's the coastline paradox. And what it's really telling you is that for certain shapes, the answer depends entirely on the scale you're using to measure.
So that's the key idea here.
That's the core of it. A fractal is a shape that exhibits what we call self-similarity. It means it looks basically the same no matter how much you zoom in.
Okay, so that coastline, a tiny piece of it, has the same jagged, rough structure as the whole thing.
Exactly. And once you have that concept in your head, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere in nature.
Right, like a fern leaf. That's a classic example.
It is. You look at the whole leaf, and then you look at one of the small leaflets branching off.
And it's just a miniature version of the big one.
Or a lightning bolt. A tiny fork off the main strike has the same jagged pattern as the entire bolt streaking across the sky. Even clouds. Bumps that have bumps.
It seems like it's just, I don't know, nature's favorite design choice. But it feels like there has to be more to it than that.
Well, there is. It's not an aesthetic choice. It's a choice of profound efficiency. You can think of fractals as nature's compression algorithm.
A compression algorithm, how so?
Let's take your own lungs. To get enough oxygen to live, you need a massive amount of surface area inside them. We're talking about the size of a tennis court.
A tennis court.
Yeah.
Inside your chest. That seems impossible.
It would be if your lungs weren't a fractal. The airway branches, and then those branches branch, and they keep branching all the way down to the tiny alveoli. It's a way to cram an enormous surface area into a very small volume.
So it's an optimization solution.
The ultimate optimization solution. And trees do the same thing. They need to maximize their exposure to sunlight
while using the minimum amount of wood to build their structure.
Right.
The branching pattern is the most efficient way to do it.
Exactly. So these incredibly simple, recursive branching rules create these complex, highly functional structures.
Which brings us to the math. If nature is doing this, there must be a mathematical principle behind it. And that leads to Benoit Mandelbrot.
It does. Mandelbrot was the one who really showed that you can generate infinite complexity from shockingly simple rules.
He created the Mandelbrot set.
He did, using an equation that is, well, it's almost laughably simple. Something like z equals z squared plus c.
And the key isn't the formula itself, but what you do with it.
It's the feedback loop. You take the result of that simple calculation and you just plug it right back into the equation over and over and over again.
And that simple, repetitive process
generates infinite detail. You can zoom into the Mandelbrot set forever, and you will never, ever run out of new, intricate, and beautiful shapes. It never ends.
So the big takeaway here really is
that
complexity doesn't need to come from complex rules.
That's it exactly. Infinite beauty, infinite structure can emerge from one very simple rule that just repeats itself.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on. If a tiny, simple formula can generate the infinite self-similar complexity we see in the Mandelbrot set, what does that suggest about the ultimate code for our entire universe? It raises this fascinating question. Maybe the fundamental rules that govern all of existence are actually incredibly simple. Maybe they're very, very short.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into what might be one of the biggest paradoxes in science.
Which is this idea of finding perfect, almost strict structure right in the middle of what looks like total chaos.
Exactly. We're dissecting the source material on a concept that scientists call the shape of chaos.
It's a really mind-bending idea because we all think of chaos as just, pure noise, randomness.
Right, something that just spirals out of control.
But the real insight here is that these systems that seem completely unpredictable are often following these hidden, almost geometric rules.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we need a visual. We need to talk about the strange attractor.
Right, so imagine a truly chaotic system like one of those double pendulums that just swings wildly.
The ones that never, ever repeat the same path.
That's the one. No, if you plotted its motion not for a minute, but for, say, 1,000,000 years.
You'd just expect a giant, messy scribble, wouldn't you?
You absolutely would. But what happens is that a distinct, a ghostly shape emerges from that mess. A boundary.
And that's the strange attractor.
That's it. And the foundational discovery here came from a meteorologist, Edward Lorenz.
He was modeling weather systems, right?
Yeah, and he plotted 3 of his variables in 3D space. And instead of that random cloud of points he expected,
He got the famous Lorenz attractor.
he did. A shape that looks exactly like a butterfly.
And that butterfly shape is so important because it's not just the shape itself, it's the behavior within the shape that defines chaos.
Precisely. This is where you see that sensitive dependence on initial conditions. The system will loop around one wing for a bit.
And then you have no idea when, but it'll suddenly flip over to the other wing.
Completely unpredictably. And if you start two paths with just a microscopic difference between them, they diverge wildly. That's the chaos.
And this is the amazing part, they never leave the shape of the butterfly.
Never. No matter how different their paths become, the system is fundamentally bounded by that shape.
So we've found this hidden order in the weather. What does this actually tell us about reality? Where else does this bounded chaos show up?
Well, this is maybe the most surprising application. Let's look at the human heart.
Okay.
A healthy heart is chaotic. Its rhythm isn't perfectly regular.
Okay, chaotic sounds bad for a heart.
It sounds bad, but it's what makes it adaptable. It has to be able to respond instantly if you suddenly run up a flight of stairs.
So its rhythm is always changing, it's non-repeating.
Exactly. The moment your heartbeat becomes perfectly, rigidly regular, that's when you're in trouble. A stable heart is actually a fragile heart, one that's heading toward failure.
Wow, so health isn't perfect rhythm, it's adaptability.
It's bounded chaos. And we see a similar thing in, say, the stock market.
Which definitely looks like a wild fever dream day to day.
Total randomness. But over decades, it doesn't just shoot off to infinity or crash to absolute zero. It operates within its own financial strange attractor. There are limits.
And that idea, that distinction between all the possibilities and the finite limits, that brings us to phase space, doesn't it?
It does. Phase space is basically a map of every single possible state a system can occupy. It's a space of possibilities.
So the strange attractor, the butterfly, is the shape of what's possible within that bigger map.
You got it. That's why we can't predict the specific state, that tiny dot, the weather in your city tomorrow. The system is just too sensitive.
But we can predict the bounds of the shape.
We can.
Yeah.
We can predict the overall climate. We can do that because we understand the limits of the chaos.
So the core takeaway for you listening is, chaos is not the absence of order. It's not a breakdown at all.
No, it's actually a higher, more complex form of order. It's the mechanism that allows for maximum adaptation and flexibility.
Which leaves us with a pretty important question to think about.
Right. If the most adaptive systems we know, like our own bodies, rely on bounded chaos to be healthy and strong,
then where else in our lives or in the systems we build might we be mistaking that rigid stability for actual strength?
a compelling thought to chew on.
It is. Go out there and start observing the shapes of chaos in your own world.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. Okay, so imagine this. You walk up to a massive structure like a cathedral made of mud. It has these complex ventilation shafts, internal air conditioning, even structural arches.
Yeah.
And then you find out the builders are tiny, blind termites.
Yeah.
I mean, virtually brainless creatures. How is that even possible? No blueprint, no manager, nothing.
It's one of the most incredible things in nature, and that's exactly what we're getting into in this deep dive. Our mission today is to really unpack the source material on two ideas: emergence and stigmergy.
Which are the concepts that explain how you get all that complexity from very simple parts.
Exactly, from incredible simplicity.
So if there's no architect, where does the plan, where does the structure actually come from? It's not in the termite's head, obviously.
Right, it's not in the head, it's in the rules of interaction. The plan is in the environment itself. And that mechanism is what we call stigmergy.
Stigmergy.
Yeah, you can think of it as indirect coordination. So the termites, they aren't talking to each other. They're leaving signs in the world that the next termite responds to.
Okay, so let's break down the rules. They have to be super, super simple for a termite to follow.
Oh, they are. Incredibly simple. You only need two. That's it. Rule 1. Every time a termite drops a mud ball, it also leaves a little dab of a chemical, a pheromone.
Got it. A scent marker.
Scent marker. And rule number 2 is just, if you, as a termite, smell a strong concentration of that pheromone, you drop your own mud ball right there.
And that's where it all clicks into place. So a few random piles start to form, but once a pile gets a little bigger, it has more scent, which attracts more termites.
Which makes the pile grow even faster, creating this positive feedback loop. And out of nowhere, you get pillars, spontaneously.
Wow, and the arches. How do they do the arches?
Well, that's the beautiful part. As two of these pillars grow closer together, the air between them gets trapped. The pheromone scent gets really concentrated in that little gap.
So that becomes the strongest signal in the area.
It becomes irresistible, so they just start building sideways toward that scent. And eventually they meet in the middle. Boom! An arch. It's construction without a leader.
That is just the perfect example of emergence, isn't it? This idea that the intelligence, the smartness, isn't in the individual parts at all. It's in the system. It's in the interaction.
Right. It's like a single molecule of H2O isn't wet.
No, of course not.
Wetness is an emergent property. It only happens when you have millions of those molecules all slipping and sliding past each other.
And it connects all the way up to us. I mean, a single neuron in your brain isn't conscious. It can't think.
Not at all. But you, your thoughts, your memories, your entire sense of self, that is the emergent result of 86 billion of them all firing in this unbelievably complex pattern, dumb parts creating a smart whole.
But the source material we looked at brings up this fascinating, this dark side to it all. Emergence isn't always good. What happens when the simple rules have a bug?
Yeah, this is where it gets a little scary, and you start to see the fragility in these systems. We have to talk about the ant death spiral.
Right.
So army ants operate on an even simpler rule. Just follow the chemical trail of the ant directly in front of you.
That sounds pretty efficient for moving a huge colony.
It is, until the lead ant, maybe by pure chance, loops back and crosses its own path.
Oh, no. So it finds its own scent trail.
And it starts following itself, then the ant behind it follows it, and the one behind that, and so on.
So they're locked in a perfect circle, a feedback loop with no exit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The entire colony gets trapped in this spinning circle, marching and marching until they literally die of exhaustion. It's a complete system crash.
A bug in the biological software.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the big takeaway here is that order doesn't need a leader. It just needs local rules and feedback. But if there's a flaw in those rules, the very same process that creates complexity can lead to, catastrophic failure.
And that just makes you think. If we are all emergent systems and these simple rules can build such complex and fragile things, where else might we be seeing these kinds of death spirals? In our own organizations or our social systems that are built on simple feedback loops. Something to think about as you go forward.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping right into a pretty mind-bending principle that governs, almost everything. Synchronization.
And more specifically, spontaneous order. We're looking at how really complex, chaotic systems can just fall into perfect rhythm with no one in charge.
Exactly. And the best place to start, the absolute wildest example from the sources, has to be the fireflies.
Oh, absolutely. You have to picture this. In Southeast Asia, there are these mangrove swamps with thousands, literally thousands of fireflies.
And they're not just blinking randomly?
No, not at all. They're all flashing on and off in perfect synchronized time. The whole forest just pulses with light. It's surreal.
It is. And for decades, biologists who saw this were completely stumped. They searched for a conductor firefly.
The 1-liter bug setting the beat for everyone else.
But they never found one. And here's where it gets really interesting. It was math that proved that conductor was just a myth.
Which means that incredible order wasn't imposed from the top down. It bubbled up from the bottom. The math behind it is the science of coupled oscillators.
Okay, let's unpack that. Coupled oscillators. So we imagine every firefly has its own little internal clock, right? Its own oscillator.
Exactly. Each one has its own natural rhythm. Some a little faster, some a little slower.
So how do they all link up?
The interaction rule is, and this is the key, it's incredibly simple, basically.
Yeah.
If I'm a firefly and I see my neighbor flash, I just nudge my own clock forward a tiny bit to try and match it. That's it. That's the whole instruction.
So no master plan, just adjust to your neighbor. And that's enough to go from total chaos to perfect sync.
That's all it takes. The slightly faster clocks get pulled back a little, waiting for the others, and the slower ones are nudged to speed up.
So they're all sort of compromising locally.
Precisely. And this keeps happening, this constant feedback, until the system hits a critical tipping point. It's called a phase transition.
A phase transition. Yeah. So it's like a switch just flips.
That's a perfect way to put it. The randomness suddenly collapses, and the entire system, all thousands of them, snaps into coherent order all at once.
Wow. And this isn't just about bugs. The same math explains some pretty big human-made disasters, too.
Right. Which brings us to the Millennium Bridge in London back in 2000. It's a brilliant and, frankly, terrifying example for you of this principle in action.
So on opening day, thousands of people are walking across, and the bridge starts to sway a little bit.
Just a tiny bit. And people, to keep their balance, instinctively adjusted their walk to match the sway of the bridge.
Okay, but hang on. If they were matching the bridge, couldn't you argue the bridge itself was the conductor?
Ah, that's the common misconception. The bridge provided the initial signal, yes, but the devastating force came from the people synchronizing with each other.
I see. So thousands of footsteps falling at the same time, left, right, left, right.
And that collective synchronized stomping amplified that tiny sway so much that the bridge almost tore itself apart. The order was spontaneous.
That's incredible. It's a powerful demonstration that you don't even need consciousness for this to happen.
You don't. It even works with inanimate objects.
Yeah.
Get this. If you hang two pendulum clocks on the same wall, side by side,
You'll just sync up.
over time, yes, the tiny, tiny vibrations traveling through the wood of the wall act as the communication link between them.
So the wall isn't a conductor, it's just the medium. It lets them feel each other's rhythm.
Exactly. It's the coupling medium.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key insight across all these sources, from the fireflies to the bridge to the clocks.
The bottom line seems to be that chaos kind of wants to be ordered. If you connect things, they'll conspire to move together.
Highly sophisticated order from very simple local rules. It's a universal principle. You see it in brain neurons firing, in internet traffic. It's everywhere.
So the final thought for you, the listener, is this. Now that you know the rule, where else is this hidden self-organizing order, hiding in plain sight, governing the world all around you? Something to think about.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting right into the heart of collective intelligence. Our mission is to really understand the surprising mathematical line between a wise crowd and, well, a stupid mob.
So let's start with the classic experiment, the one everyone knows. The jelly bean jar.
Yeah.
You ask one person, they're probably way off, but you ask, say, 1,000 strangers, and the average of their guesses. It's terrifyingly accurate.
It is. It's often better than a single expert who spent all day on the problem. And what's so fascinating there is the mechanism, what we call the cancellation effect.
Right.
Every individual error is basically just random noise. Some people guess 100 too high, some guess 100 too low. When you pull all of those answers together, those errors they neutralize each other. They cancel out.
Leaving only the truth, the signal in the middle of all that noise.
Exactly, the true signal.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So if a crowd can be this kind of genius calculating machine, what's the one condition, the crucial thing you need for it to work?
It's a very strict requirement. It's independence.
For the crowd to be wise, its members cannot communicate their judgment. Their estimate can't be influenced by others. Think about it. If person B hears person A guess 10,000, they're immediately anchored to that number.
Okay.
Their own guess isn't random anymore. Their error is now connected to person A's error.
But wait, I have to push back a little on that. If nobody can talk, how do we collaborate on anything? Isn't the point of a team to communicate?
Well, that's the essential insight here. We're talking about independence of judgment, not independence of action. The moment people start mimicking each other's judgment, their errors become correlated. They all start to fail in the exact same direction.
And that's when you get a bubble.
You get a bubble or you get a mob. You don't get wisdom.
So let's pivot to that. This failure mode, it explains so much more than just jelly beans. How does this drive something like, say, a stock market crash, or even viral outrage online?
That's what we call an information cascade.
An information cascade.
It's what happens when people stop looking at the original data, the jar, the company's financial reports, the actual facts, and they start basing their decisions only on what other people are doing.
Oh, so the psychological switch is just instant. You stop trusting your own judgment and just assume everyone ahead of you was right.
Exactly.
It sounds like tulipmania. The actual value of the thing vanishes, and all that's left is just the fever of imitation.
Precisely. And when that independence is lost, the crowd stops being a collection of smart individuals. It functionally becomes a single, extremely stupid organism.
Wow.
The analogy is a bit extreme, but think of the ant death spiral.
I'm not sure I know that one.
The ants just start following the ant in front of them, ignoring their own senses until the entire colony marches in a circle and dies. They stop trusting their own data.
That's a brutal analogy. So a company board could just walk itself off a cliff because imitation took over.
It can, and it does.
So what does this all mean for actually building a smart group?
Well, it connects directly to why diversity is so important. And I don't just mean as a social ideal, but as a mathematical strength.
A mathematical strength. How so?
If everyone on a team thinks the same way, comes from the same background, their errors will all be correlated. The group is then just the functional equivalent of one person. It's a total waste.
So you're saying the person who guesses 10 million jelly beans and the one who guesses 5, they're both essential to the process.
Absolutely. For true accuracy, the group requires members who are wrong in different ways. You need that statistical variance. You need the wild optimist and the extreme pessimist because their different viewpoints guarantee that their random errors cancel out.
So that's the core takeaway then. A crowd is a genius only as long as its members stay individuals. The moment they start following a leader, or even just each other, the whole machine breaks down.
It does. The group IQ just drops to 0 when individual judgment gets replaced by imitation. And I think that raises a really important question for you, for anyone listening. When was the last time you followed the crowd instead of relying on your own data? And did you even notice when you made the switch? Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're pulling apart a real classic, the prisoner's dilemma.
A fundamental piece of game theory.
And we want to get right to the paradox at the heart of it, How can purely rational people end up, well, collectively destroying themselves?
That is the mission. If you can get your head around this one scenario, you've got a shortcut to understanding why so many groups make just terrible decisions.
Okay, so let's set the stage. The classic setup.
2 bank robbers. Let's call them A and B.
They're caught, and the police separate them immediately. They can't talk to each other.
Right. And here's the deal they're offered.
If they both keep their mouths shut, they each get a minor charge. Just 1 year in jail.
Which is, the best collective outcome.
Yeah.
The best thing for the team.
There's always a but. If A betrays B while B stays silent.
A walks free, scot-free.
Yeah.
And B gets 10 years. A terrible outcome for him.
And what if they both betray each other?
Then they both get 5 years, which is better than 10, but a lot worse than 1.
And this is where the logic trap comes in.
This is the trap. Think about it from A's point of view. He has to wonder, what is B going to do?
Right.
So he thinks, okay, if B stays silent, my best move is to betray him. I get 0 years instead of 1.
Makes perfect sense for him.
But, he thinks, if B betrays me, my best move is still to betray him. I get 5 years instead of 10.
So no matter what the other guy does.
No matter what, your personal best move is always to betray.
And since they're both rational, they both follow that logic.
They both betray. And they both end up with a 5-year sentence.
A truly tragic result when they could have just served 1. So why can't they break out of it?
They're stuck.
Yeah.
That stable, miserable state, that's what we call a Nash equilibrium.
Okay, break that down for us.
It just means it's a point where neither player can make things better for themselves by changing their strategy alone.
So if robber A suddenly decides to be the good guy and stay silent?
His sentence jumps from 5 years to 10. He just makes it worse for himself. The trap is sprung perfectly.
So this isn't just a thought experiment. Where does this bite us in the real world?
Oh, everywhere. But a huge one is climate change.
How does that map?
Well, it is rational, in a way, for a single country to pollute. You get immediate economic gains, jobs, cheap energy.
The short-term win.
Exactly. But if every country follows that same rational self-interest.
The collective outcome is catastrophic for everyone.
Right. And there's no global cop to enforce cooperation, so everyone's kind of stuck.
That's a massive example. What about something more individual?
Performance-enhancing drugs in sports. PEDs.
Oh, okay.
If one cyclist dopes, they get a 10% edge, they win. So what does every other cyclist have to do to compete?
They have to dope too, just to stay in the race.
So now they're all doping. They're all damaging their health, taking on huge risks.
And the rankings probably end up looking about the same as they would have anyway.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Everyone is worse off just to maintain the status quo. No one can afford to be the one to cooperate when the system rewards betrayal.
It's such a powerful lens. It shows how individual rationality, when you scale it up, just becomes collective insanity.
That's the core takeaway. The smart move for you.
Is the suicide move for the group.
Absolutely. So here's a final thought for you to take away. The next time you see a contentious negotiation for two companies in a price war, maybe.
Or a political stalemate.
Perfect. Ask yourself, are they just pursuing their own best outcome? And what is the collective price everyone is paying for that narrow optimization?
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're unpacking what might be the single most intense intellectual puzzle of the 20th century.
Mutually assured destruction. Or MAMAD.
Exactly. We're calling it the Cold War algorithm, and we're going to get into the logic of how strategic thinkers used game theory to keep the peace.
And our mission really is to understand this shocking idea. that the smartest people at the time concluded that human rationality itself was the biggest weakness in the whole system.
Right. It's a system designed to bypass our own intelligence to save ourselves.
Yeah.
So the first hurdle with mana is deterrence. On the surface, it's pretty simple, isn't it?
It seems so. You just promise your enemy that if they attack you, your retaliation will be so massive that they will, cease to exist.
But that immediately creates a problem.
A huge one. The paradox of credibility.
Okay, so walk us through that.
Well, imagine an attack actually happens. Let's say a nuke takes out New York. In that moment, after the damage is already done, what's the rational thing to do?
I mean, you'd want to strike back.
But would you? If you are a purely rational leader, you know that launching your own missiles guarantees the end of the world. For everyone. So counter-launching is actually global suicide.
So the rational choice, weirdly, is to just absorb the blow.
Exactly. And that's the terrifying part. If your enemy thinks you're rational, if they think you'll blink,
they're incentivized to hit you first.
wow, that's the vulnerability, that human hesitation. And that's what strategists like Herman Kahn and Thomas Schelling really dug into. They knew you couldn't rely on a sane person to choose to end the world.
So you need a way to guarantee you'll do the insane thing.
Yes, which leads to this incredible concept, the rationality of irrationality.
You have to convince your enemy that you're just crazy enough to bring the whole house down out of spite.
It's a calculated madness.
Yeah.
Schelling's big insight was that you have to pre-commit. You have to tie your own hands, remove your own freedom to choose in the future.
You take away your own ability to back down.
Precisely. You're manipulating their risk calculation.
But even if you're pretending, a human is still a human. There's always that chance of hesitation. So how do you make it an absolute certainty?
Well, that's where the logic goes to its ultimate and, frankly, most chilling extreme.
The doomsday machine.
The doomsday machine. It takes the human problem out of the picture entirely.
It's a system that just detects an attack and automatically launches the counterstrike. No human input at all.
None. It's the perfect commitment device because, as the saying goes, you can't negotiate with a circuit board. There's no empathy, no last-second doubt.
The consequence is just guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this? Our deep dive shows that the stability of the Cold War wasn't just about diplomacy. It was about this meticulously engineered, terrifying standoff.
Yeah, the algorithm worked. These thinkers created a game where the only winning move was, truly, not to play.
And if you connect that to the big picture,
It shows that peace was kept by designing a system that removed free will from the equation at the most critical moment. Humanity literally built a suicide machine and just left it armed.
and that's the thought we want to leave you with. We engineered 50 years of stability, yes, but we did it by ensuring a gun was permanently pointed at the head of the planet.
And the trigger wasn't held by a trembling human hand. It was held by cold, hard, pre-programmed certainty. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling, a pretty big question. Is our sense of morality, kindness, forgiveness, is it just the result of a winning mathematical strategy?
It sounds a little cold when you put it like that, but the evidence is fascinating.
It really is. We're diving into Robert Axelrod's famous computer tournament from 1980. He set up this massive contest using the iterated prisoner's dilemma.
Right. And for anyone who needs a quick refresher, the dilemma is basically a game where two players are always better off if they both cooperate.
But, and this is the catch, each player has this huge short-term incentive to betray the other for a bigger personal score.
Exactly. So Axelrod had all these programs play against each other for thousands and thousands of rounds to see what strategy would come out on top.
And the competition was fierce, right? You had some really aggressive strategies in the mix.
Absolutely. There are programs we could call mean, which were designed to just betray. Always.
Always betray. Wow.
Then you had random ones and even some really complex, sneaky programs trying to calculate the perfect moment to stab their opponent in the back.
So I have to assume everyone thought one of those clever, sneaky programs was going to win. The one that could outthink everyone else.
That was the consensus, yeah. The smart money was on some kind of highly complex Machiavellian code.
But that is not what happened. And this is where it gets really interesting. The program that won was shockingly simple.
It was. The victor was a little bit of code called tit for tat, and I think the biggest shock was its size. It was just 4 lines of code.
4 lines. That's it. So let's unpack this 4-line philosophy. What were the rules?
Okay, so rule 1 is be nice. You always start by cooperating, no matter what.
You offer a handshake first. I like it. What's rule 2?
Rule 2 is retaliate. If the other program betrays you, you betray them right back in the next round, immediately. No hesitation.
Okay, so you don't let yourself get pushed around. That makes sense.
Then comes rule 3. Forgive. The moment they go back to cooperating, you do too. You don't hold a grudge.
Instantly forgive. That's
Yeah.
a big one. And the 4th rule.
The 4th is probably the most philosophically important. Be clear. Which means don't be envious. Your goal isn't to score more than your opponent.
So you're not trying to win each interaction.
Exactly. You're just trying to maximize your own score over the long run. It's not a zero-sum game.
So why did this work so well? Why did this simple, almost naive strategy just dominate the competition?
Well, think about what happened to the others. The mean programs.
Yeah.
They ran into each other and just got locked in these endless spirals of betrayal. They wiped each other out.
Okay, so mutual destruction. What about the purely nice ones?
They got eaten alive. The aggressive programs just exploited them until they were, eliminated.
Right. So tit for tat survived the mean guys because it would fight back.
It would fight back. But it flourished with the other cooperative programs because it was willing to be nice first and to forgive. It got the best of both worlds.
So this is a winning mathematical code from 1980. How does this connect to the real world? I mean, how do we get from a computer program to, say, a vampire bat?
That's the perfect question. This logic, this tit-for-tat logic, it seems to be what evolution programmed into social species. Biological altruism.
You mean like those vampire bats that share blood meals?
Precisely. They share with a bat that's hungry, knowing that when they're hungry, the favor will almost certainly be returned. It's a biological tit-for-tat.
And what about us, humans?
For us, you can think of our emotions as the algorithms. Guilt, for example, is basically the pain signal that corrects you when you've betrayed a cooperative relationship. It's telling you, don't do that again. It's bad for your long-term score.
So guilt is my brain's debugging tool for my social strategy.
In a way, yes. And anger is the algorithm that triggers retaliation. It makes sure you don't get taken advantage of. Trust is just the memory of past cooperation.
So the big takeaway here is that morality isn't just some lofty spiritual idea. It's the most efficient code for long-term survival in a community.
Yeah.
Being good is just good math.
It really seems to be. And that leaves you with something to think about. Our sources suggest that the good guys really do finish first, that they win the long game. But there's a crucial catch.
What's that?
The strategy only works. They only win if they are willing to punch back immediately when betrayed. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into a problem in physics that really reveals a fundamental barrier to what we can know.
The three-body problem.
Exactly. Our mission today is to figure out just how far the science of prediction can actually go before it, crashes into total chaos. And the story here is just fantastic. Isaac Newton gives us this perfect mathematical tool to predict the universe. And then it just fails completely. All because you add one single extra object into the mix.
Right. But to really understand the failure, you first have to appreciate the success, the incredible success of the two-body problem.
Okay, so like the Earth and the Moon.
Exactly, Earth and Moon. For that, Newton's equations are perfect. They give you what we call a closed-form solution.
Which is just a single neat equation.
Yes, a single equation you can write down that gives you the answer forever. You can predict exactly where the moon will be in 1 billion years. It's stable, predictable.
That's like a perfect clock.
A perfect clock.
So if that's so perfect, what on earth happens when you just add one more thing? You get the three-body problem. Earth, Moon, and the Sun. But hold on, isn't this just a limit on our computers? With a modern supercomputer, can't we just brute force the answer?
And that is the absolute core of it. The frustration, it's not that the math is just hard. It's that there is no single equation, no closed-form solution exists. It has nothing to do with computing power. The math itself it breaks down.
That's wild. Why? How does adding just one more body break the entire system?
It's because you get this inescapable feedback loop. Think about it. Body A's gravity pulls on body B,
Okay.
which pulls on body C, but then body C is pulling back on body A.
So every single movement immediately changes the entire calculation for the next movement.
Instantly. It's an uncomputable, chaotic dance. You can't write one rule for it because the system is constantly rewriting its own rules.
So if finding an equation is impossible, what does the universe actually do? What are the consequences?
Well, the universe delivers instability, pure chaos.
Always.
Almost always. There are a few very, very rare stable patterns, like a figure-8 orbit you might have seen, but generally no. These systems are unstable by their very nature.
Right.
And that chaos tends to resolve itself in the most violent way.
Which is
One of the bodies gets kicked out.
kicked out.
Yeah, ejected.
Yeah.
Flung into the void of space forever.
Okay, and this is where it starts to get a little unnerving for, for us here on Earth. Our solar system has way more than 3 bodies. We just sort of assume it's all stable.
We do assume that. But the truth is, our solar system is technically a chaotic system. We can't actually prove its long-term stability.
What does that mean, technically chaotic?
It means we can't prove that over billions of years, Mercury won't get a little gravitational nudge from Jupiter and get accelerated just enough to either crash into Venus or, well, get thrown out of the system entirely.
Wait, so the stability of our entire planetary system, it's fundamentally an assumption, not a mathematical proof.
In the very, very long term, yes. And this realization is precisely what shattered that old dream of the clockwork universe.
The idea that if you knew where everything was, you could predict the future forever.
Exactly. And this goes back to the 1890s, to a mathematician named Henri Poincaré. He was the one who proved the 3-body problem was insoluble. He showed the universe had this inherent barrier to what we could know.
So the main takeaway here isn't just that the math is complicated.
No, not at all.
It's that we can't even solve for the gravity of 3 rocks. That gravity, at its very core, creates uncomputable chaos.
And this raises a really important question. Poincaré apparently felt this deep despair when he figured this out. If the universe contains this kind of mandatory, unpredictable chaos at such a basic level, what does that really tell you about the predictability of the cosmos itself?
Yeah. And if the solution to the gravity of 3 bodies just doesn't exist, what other seemingly simple systems out there, in finance or weather or biology, might be hiding that same essential uncomputable chaos? Something to think about until the next deep dive.
All right, for today's deep dive, we're getting into an idea that is so out there. It basically rewrites reality. The holographic principle.
It really does. And we're going straight to the source material on this, from Hawking's initial work to Susskind's frameworks.
And the question they're asking is just wild. Is it everything we see, everything we feel, is it all just a projection? Is the universe, fundamentally flat?
And what's amazing is that this wasn't some philosophical thought experiment. This came from a genuine crisis in physics.
Right. It all starts with the black hole.
Exactly. Stephen Hawking had this terrifying realization. Black holes have entropy, which is a measure of information.
Yeah.
And if they have entropy, they must have a temperature.
And if something has a temperature, it has to radiate energy away.
Yes, which is now called Hawking radiation.
Yeah.
And this leads to a conclusion that just breaks physics.
Yeah.
Eventually, the black hole radiates all its energy away and just evaporates.
It just pops out of existence.
Poof! Gone. And that's the start of the problem. Think about all the stuff that fell in. Stars, planets, all of that information.
Where did it go?
That's the question that started, probably the biggest war in modern physics, the black hole information paradox.
So you have 2 titans of physics at odds. On one side, you have general relativity, which says, yeah, the singularity at the center of the black hole crushed it all. Information gone.
Annihilated. But on the other side, you have quantum mechanics, and its most fundamental law is that information can never be destroyed.
It can be scrambled, mixed up, but never, ever deleted from the universe.
You just can't have it vanish. So, who wins?
And this is where the holographic solution comes in, from Gerard Hooft and Leonard Susskind.
They proposed a way out. They said, you're both right, sort of. The information isn't destroyed. It's just stored.
Okay, but stored where? If it's not inside the black hole, where is it?
It's on the edge. As an object, say, a book falls in, all the 3D information that makes up that book gets encoded onto the 2D surface of the black hole.
The event horizon.
The event horizon, it gets, smeared across the surface. Think of it like a sticker. The 3D object falls in, and its information becomes a 2D sticker on the surface of this cosmic balloon.
That feels so counterintuitive, though. Information is a 3-dimensional thing. My capacity to store books is based on the volume of my bookshelf, not the square footage of its back panel.
You would think so, but this is where the math just completely flips the script. This is the crucial part.
Go on.
When they calculated the maximum information a black hole can hold, its entropy, they found it wasn't proportional to its volume.
It was proportional to its
surface area, the 2D area of its event horizon. Normally, information capacity scales with volume, the cube of the radius, but here it's scaled with the square.
Wow. Okay, so that's the mathematical proof. The data isn't in the 3D space, it's on the 2D surface.
That is the smoking gun. It's the strongest piece of evidence we have.
Oh, so Let's make the big leap. If this is true for a black hole, which is the densest object we know of,
Then maybe it's true for everything.
the entire universe.
That is the holographic principle, the idea that our whole cosmos could work this way. Imagine the universe as a soup can.
Okay.
We think we're the soup inside. All this 3D stuff, us, the galaxies, it's all in there. But the principle says the real reality, the source code, is actually encoded on the 2D label on the outside of the can.
So we are a projection. Our 3D existence is just a hologram being projected from data on some distant two-dimensional cosmic boundary.
A very, very high-fidelity hologram, but yes.
Which brings us to the most mind-bending part of this. What does that do to the forces we experience every day? What about gravity?
Well, this is a huge implication. If our universe is fundamentally 2D information, then gravity might not be a fundamental force at all.
You mean it's an illusion?
In a way, yeah. It could be an emergent effect, an artifact of 2D data projecting itself into what we perceive as a higher dimension. Like how depth in a 3D movie is an illusion created by two flat images. The pull you feel from gravity might just be the thermodynamic noise of that flat data rearranging itself.
So the takeaway here is that even though you feel solid, you feel like you take up space. You feel fundamentally 3D. Mathematically, you might just be flat data.
A stunningly complex pattern painted on the boundary of the universe.
So a final thought for you to chew on. The next time you drop your keys and feel that reliable, predictable pull of gravity, ask yourself, is that force really there?
Or are you just watching a flicker of information, a beautiful glitch in the cosmic hologram?
Okay, let's just jump right in. What if everything you think is real, I mean, your memories, this conversation, the very physics of the universe, is actually just a line of code?
It's a huge idea.
It is. And for this deep dive, we're going to look at the two big arguments for simulation theory. First, the pure statistics of it, and then the really strange physical evidence that's kind of hiding in plain sight.
And the statistical argument, it doesn't even come from physics. It's pure philosophy, mostly from Nick Bostrom.
Right, the philosopher.
Exactly. And his core idea is pretty straightforward. He says, look, just assume that any civilization that gets advanced enough, what he calls post-human, will have insane amounts of computing power.
And what do you do with all that power?
You run simulations, specifically ancestor simulations. You'd run these incredibly detailed virtual histories of your past, maybe millions of them, just to see how things could have turned out.
And that's where the math just turns against you, right? Because you have that one single base reality. But then you might have a billion simulated realities running alongside it.
At least. Could be trillions.
So the odds that you, the person listening right now, are in that one original reality versus one of the billions of simulated ones are statistically almost zero.
It's just a numbers game. Which then brings up the obvious question.
Yeah.
If we were in a simulation, did the programmers leave any clues behind?
Does reality itself look like a computer program?
Well, yes. And this is where the physics gets really weird. Let's start with the idea of pixels.
You're talking about the Planck length, that impossibly small number.
Exactly. 1.6 times 10 to the negative 35th meters. It's not just a random small number. It's what you get when you combine the fundamental constants of the universe.
So what does it mean?
It means there's a minimum size, a fundamental resolution. Space isn't smooth and infinite. It's pixelated.
Okay, so reality has a maximum resolution. And what about a speed limit?
The speed of light. Constant c. Nothing can go faster.
Why, though? Why a hard limit? It feels a lot like a processor's clock speed, the maximum speed at which a computer can process information.
That's the perfect analogy. It's a processing bottleneck built into the system. And it gets even stranger when you look at quantum mechanics.
The observation problem.
Yeah. The fact that a particle doesn't really have a definite state, it's just a wave of probability until you actually look at it.
That sounds like a massive resource-saving trick. I mean, in video games, they have this thing called frustum culling.
Right.
The game engine doesn't bother rendering anything that's behind you or outside of your view. It only draws what you can see to save memory.
And that's the argument. The universe might only be rendering reality collapsing that wave function the moment you observe it, just to be efficient.
So if it's a program, it's probably not a perfect one. There have to be
glitches, right?
Bugs in the code.
And physicists are actually looking for them. Some are analyzing cosmic rays, looking for particles that don't quite follow the rules, hoping they might reveal the underlying lattice grid of the simulation.
Or maybe some of the biggest problems in physics aren't even physics problems at all.
What do you mean?
The three-body problem. How it's basically impossible to predict the orbits of three celestial bodies perfectly. Maybe it's not a deep cosmic mystery. Maybe it's just a rounding error in the aliens' floating point math.
A bug they just haven't gotten around to patching yet.
Exactly. So, after all of this, the statistics and the physics, what's the big takeaway for you, the listener? If this is all true, it kind of boils all philosophy down to just one really important question.
Are you a player? Or are you an NPC?
A non-player character.
Yeah.
Are you a conscious being with free will, or are you just part of the scenery, designed to make the simulation feel real for someone else? Your entire relevance hinges on that.
We've covered a lot. The grim probability and the physics that looks suspiciously optimized. But if we are code, that implies someone wrote the code. Someone is running the program.
Which leaves us with the final and maybe the most human question of all.
Does the user on the other side of the screen love us?